Hey, beautiful people. Thank you so much for joining me on the Love Creates Freedom podcast. If you are on the podcast and listening, thank you so much for listening. If you're here watching in video, thank you so much for being on Video Land. I don't normally do these introductions, but I'm kind of starting to get into it. I'm getting into a bit of rhythm. I'm starting to feel a little less, I guess, goofy. I think there's just a really big part of me that hasn't wanted to do these introductions because of how people would see me and how I felt about me. And now as I am dealing with more and more layers, I am becoming more and more open and more accepting of being a goofball, which is what I really am. So thank you so much for being on the episode today. My guest is Sonny. As you know, if you've been following me for a while, I don't really know anything about my guests. I don't come in with a whole lot of wisdom. I want it to unfold. I want the conversations to just unfold naturally and organically. So I don't have any preconceived ideas. I don't have any misconceptions about what they've shared. All I know is Sonny and he's a man. And I watched one video that showed that he's been in prison, but I don't know all the details of it. So all of that interesting conversation is going to unfold. And I can guarantee you that we are going to be talking about mindset, trauma, how he came out of where he is to where he is now, because that is what all of these conversations are about. You've gone through trauma. Yes, we've all gone through trauma. We're all victims, but how? How do you get out of that space? How? And I guarantee that is what this conversation is going to be about today. So let's get on with the show. I am going to stop prattling. Here is Sonny. Thanks for watching. When I was watching that short video, and I was wondering what I was going to ask you today, I actually thought to hand it over to you because you know you better than anyone. And I was thinking, if you could start somewhere in a direction where you don't normally go, something that you really want to talk about today, where would you start?
I think I would probably go with forgiveness as a weakness. It's something that I never really contemplated or considered before, but recently someone had told me that a lot of men see forgiveness as weakness, and there's this pervasive concept that being forgiving is somehow being weak. And I completely disagree with that assessment. Like, I think it takes more strength and more bravery and more courage and more intellectual awareness to be forgiving. And the benefit of being forgiving is so freeing, right? Like it's not for the other person, it's for yourself. Because when you forgive, you free yourself from the shackles of victimhood. And that is where most of people's problems lie, is in being a victim. And what they need to conceptualize and grasp, and it's not a popular opinion, but victimhood is a choice. Right?
It really is.
You are a victim when someone perpetrates you. If someone does something to you, you have been victimized by that person. However, 5, 10, 12 years down the road, you're no longer a victim unless you choose to be a victim. You may have been a victim, but you are not currently a victim. And you're only a victim if you choose. By keeping that thought relevant in your mind and feeling, hurt and betrayed and violated, you're keeping that victimization alive. Because I promise you that your perpetrator is not thinking about it. Your perpetrator is not sitting there toiling back and forth in their mind whether or not one of their victims are still suffering from the mental effects of victimization, because they're not. It's most perpetrators and predators don't have that intellectual awareness. They're not emotionally intelligent, so they don't grasp the effect of their violation. And I would just really like to try to help people understand that message, that forgiveness is strength. It takes strong willpower to be able to forgive. I've had to come to terms with men that have raped me, men that have molested me, people that have betrayed me, family. I've had to come to terms with all of that. And the way that I was able to reconcile being able to forgive is that there was a time in my life when I had to go back and relive everybody that I've ever violated. And the one thing that I was searching for the most was to be forgiven for the things that I had done. And I didn't know how to do that. Like, I can't name the people that I've hurt. I mean, I've done so much crime in my short life prior to my incarceration that I mean, I can't even tell you. I can't even remember half of the crimes that I've committed. And so it would be impossible for me to remember who it was or where it was. And that thought plagued me. I mean, it haunted me when I started my metamorphosis from being the person that I was to the person that I am. I had to come to terms with forgiveness. And how do I effectuate being forgiven by people that I don't know, that I can't get a hold of, that I can't apologize to face. And my mentor was a Muslim man in the hole in prison, the solitary confinement, where I did 19 months. And we've all heard the old term, if you write it down on paper and then burn it, it feels better, right? Or like it relieves you of whatever emotional baggage you're holding. And I come to find that that's actually very effective, except I was in prison in the hole and I couldn't burn anything. So I had to flush it down the toilet. It's not the most beautiful ceremony, but I spent months writing out letters to every person that I could remember, and then to even people that I couldn't remember, and expressed my just heartfelt remorse to these people on pen and paper because there was no way to find them. And when I first started doing it, I noticed that what I was writing was filled with excuses. It was all about I've been molested, I've been raped, I've been haunted and tormented in unfair circumstances in my life, and blah blah blah. And this is what I'm using to justify causing pain or violating these people. And I'm realizing when I finish it, I'm like, this is crap. I'm just making excuses. This isn't a heartfelt, remorseful apology. And so I would rewrite it and kept rewriting and rewriting. And finally, I was able to come to terms with the impact, the potential impact of some of the crimes that I've committed, like breaking into people's homes and stealing stuff to sell to get money because of my greed and my lack of conscience of the impact of doing that to somebody. I finally came to terms with but there's a potential that I may have destroyed a child's ability to have faith and security in their parents' ability to protect them. I may have caused a wife to lose hope in her husband, that her husband can't protect her and her family. I may have destroyed a man's sense of self-security, that he can't protect his family because somebody breaks into their homes and steals precious heirlooms. And that haunted me as I'm writing that out. And then when I would write them, I would pace back and forth in my cell and I would read them out loud. And I mean, I would cry and I would go into depression and I wouldn't eat for days. I couldn't sleep. And when I did sleep, it was haunted with nightmares and cold sweats. And that was my purging. And when I finally got through all of it, I then ripped them all up into little shreds and put them in the toilet and flushed them down, because my mentor had told me, when you come to terms with your heartfelt remorse, you give it to Allah and God. And I'm not a religious guy, so it's God, Allah, Buddha, whatever you call them, the universal entity that someone believes in will transport that genuine remorse that is on your heart that you have articulated to the world, and they will transport that remorse and put it on the hearts of the people that you're sending it to. And I found solace in that concept, that maybe that was a reality. Maybe I was able to find some semblance of forgiveness because I felt lighter when I did it. I just felt like this massive weight had been taken off my shoulders. And if anybody thinks that is weakness, they don't understand the definition of weakness, because it's far from weak.
Not only is it far from weak, it also takes a massive amount of courage, and it takes a massive amount of responsibility. So where you started talking about the victims are all about blame. Like you said, this happened to me, this happened to me, this happened to me, this happened to me. But go to that depth. I don't think I've ever gone to that depth of forgiveness before. So I kind of feel like now I'm looking at forgiveness from a completely different perspective. When you're sitting in a space where you know you've done things, and obviously the things that I have done to hurt people is different to the things that you've done, but it still has that same feeling, that same hurt, that same pain.
Sure.
I'm now looking at forgiveness from a completely different perspective, going, holy crap, I
think most people, when they hear the word forgiveness, they automatically, just because of the societal structure that we have, they imagine that forgiveness means I've done something wrong, or someone else has done something wrong and they want me to forgive them. And automatically we have this entitlement to, why should I forgive you? What? And if you just take a second to think about everything you've ever done to somebody and how that affected you, on whatever level, even if it's lying to your partner, or cheating somebody out of something, or stealing something, like that has an effect. Everything has an effect. And if you want to be forgiven for the things that you've done, you also have to find that same emotional capacity to release those that have done you wrong. Otherwise, you're asking for something you're not willing to give. And the universe just does not work like that. It just doesn't work. Like, you can't expect people to forgive you if you can't forgive somebody else.
Did you have to go through something to forgive the people so you went through a process to forgive yourself for the things that you had done to other people, but what about the people that had done things to you?
Well, that was the start of it. Like, how do I forgive my uncle, my mom's boyfriends, the family friends, the people that molested me, the men that raped me? How do I forgive these people? Because I don't even understand what the concept of forgiveness means. What does that mean, to forgive? And that's when my mentor came through and said, well, what about the people that you've hurt? Right? You need forgiveness too, right? And that's where internal kindness comes in. I believe that everyone should walk through life with kindness as their compass. And that starts with self-kindness first. You have to be kind to yourself. And that means forgiving yourself for the things that you've done, and not walking around on a perpetual apology tour covered in shame. Because being ashamed and walking around like that blocks you from manifesting the life of your dreams from the world, which the world will gladly give you if you authentically seek it and live it, which also means you can't have any doubt. There can't be any blockage. So if you're carrying shame or guilt, that will prevent you from getting the life that you desire. Because it blocks the universe from giving it to you, because the universe listens to your subconscious heart, your will. And if you can lie to everybody else around you, but you cannot lie to yourself. When you close your eyes, you and you alone are in this world. This world is yours. This is your experience, your spin around this globe. It belongs to you and nobody else. And you cannot lie to yourself. You can try to manipulate yourself every which way from Sunday. But at the end of the day, inside your mind, you'll sit there, and the voices that we hear are the thoughts that we're having. They're not voices, they're thoughts. And we know that we're lying. We know that we're full of it. And when you get to a point where you can reconcile the things that you've done and know that you have given your heartfelt remorse into it for forgiveness, suddenly you're able to shift to the people that have done you wrong. And I've done some horrible stuff. I've never sexually violated somebody. I've never been a predator in that sense. And even though I was the recipient of that behavior, but I've still done horrible things. And if I want to be forgiven, I have to imagine that somebody that did me wrong might want that same type of forgiveness. And so, as badly as I want to be forgiven, I have to project that onto the people that have done me wrong and think that they want that type of forgiveness as well. And so I have to grant that to them in order to receive that. So if I want the forgiveness, I have to give it. Right?
Mm-hmm. Did you forgive yourself?
Of course.
Mm-hmm.
Of course. It wasn't an easy process. It took me a long time. But I also come to the stoic decision. There's nothing you can do about it. You cannot change what's already happened. You cannot change 1 second ago from 100 years ago. There's nothing you can do about it. Words can never be unsaid. Actions can never be undone. And so the only thing you can do is make up for things. When you're wrong, own it, admit it, you apologize for it, genuinely feel remorse, and do everything you can to make it right. And if you can't go to the person that you have violated and make it right, then pour yourself into the service of others and balance the scale. Right.
And I guess that's where then you have to do the work around healing the victim and believing that you're not a victim, because it's hard to be of service and give when you're in a victim mindset, because when you're in a victim, you're constantly thinking, well, the world owes me, the government owes me, these people owe me, my mum and dad owe me. And then that's a whole other, this isn't just a 5-minute journey. I kind of wanted to make that really clear, that I'm assuming you didn't just sit down and do this over one day. This was
months.
A process.
Months.
Yeah.
It was a very long, hard process. And I mean, there's so many variables that went into it, but again, coming back to the mom and the dad and that aspect of life, I had that same mentality, because victims look to blame, right? We look to blame the world. Mm-hmm. I used karma as my scapegoat for what I did in life, because in my mind, okay, let's talk about the definition of karma as we know it, what it's become, not what it was originally defined as. Karma is what you do, you get back. So at 5 years old, I started getting molested by my uncle. What could I have done in the previous 5 years to deserve that? Right. And by 7, I'm getting molested by 3 different men. And by 8 or 9, it's gone up to 4 or 5 different men. And so for 5 or 6 years of my young life, I am just being passed around. And I caught a felony at age 7. I was convicted of a felony at 7 years old in 1988. What governmental institution charges a 7-year-old with a felony for breaking into a church and stealing some pudding cups and playing cards? A 7-year-old doesn't possess criminal capacity. They don't possess criminal intent. And yet you charged me with a felony and gave me 60 days probation at 7 years old. I'm a convicted felon. So I had this mentality that karma screwed me first and that I was karma's enforcer. And so I used that excuse to victimize other people. Karma's a bitch, and somebody has to carry out karma's will, right? Somebody has to do the bad things that karma wants done to people. I guess karma chose me to be that guy. And that was the justification that I had for everything that I did. And it was such a skewed way of thinking, but in some weird way, it made me feel better about being victimized in my life. But it's because, here come my cats. All right, stop it. Because I was in that state of mind, that victimhood mentality, I took whatever excuse I could to not feel the shame or guilt of being a victim. And it wasn't until I was able to come to terms with the fact that suffering ceases to be suffering the moment it has a meaning. And I mean, and that's from Viktor Frankl, which was one of the greatest books ever written, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. And when I read that, it was a catalyst for me. Suffering ceases to be suffering the moment it has meaning. And that's right. Such is the state of sacrifice, right? So I'm not suffering. I'm defining my legacy. And that legacy is my choice. I can either have a legacy of victimhood, of trauma, of tragedy, of limitation, of quitting, of giving up, or I can have a legacy of overcoming, of triumph, of perseverance, of leadership, of conquering, of pride, of happiness, of success. And you get to choose which one of those it is. Right. And so when I was able to understand that on a deeper level, the victimhood just went away, gone. And I was easily able to forgive. I'm like, you know what? You did that. This guy did this to me, and they did this to me, but it's okay. I've done bad to people too. I'm not hurting in this moment. It's not physically bothering me right now. It's not happening right now. It will never happen again because I've learned from these experiences, and I won't allow myself to be a victim anymore. And I don't have to walk around hurting the world. If I help heal the world, so much more fulfillment and purpose comes from that, because then I've taken that victimhood and I've given it meaning. I've given that suffering meaning. There's a purpose behind the meaning. It was my destiny to walk through that life, to live that life so that I could turn it around and teach other people how to heal. People that are stuck, that don't know and haven't gone through the infernal processes like I have, how to heal so that you can avoid years of tragedy and learn how to do it right now. And it's not as difficult. It's not as difficult as what I had to go through. It doesn't have to be that complicated. There's a much easier process. And so I'm now living my life trying to teach these things in hopes that somebody somewhere gets that and that somebody can take it. I don't have one of these systems where I tell you, here's 5 steps, here's the 7 secret keys, here's the 8 secret doors, or the 12 steps. Here's my story of my experiences thus far in my life. Here's what I've gone through, here's what I've endured, and here's what I've done to overcome and rise above. Take what you can from it, leave what you can't. If it helps somebody, awesome. If it doesn't, at least I was able to articulate my experience on this globe.
I've just taken all of that in as you've been talking, going, I feel like I haven't even touched the surface of work, like emotional work. What you've done is on such a deep, deep level. And what I was wondering is, when you have someone coming to you that has been through physical abuse, sexual abuse at such a young age, what's the first is the forgiveness the first thing you say to them that they need to do to be able to come through the other side? Would you say that is the first step, is the forgiveness to the person who did it, then the forgiveness to yourself, and then the forgiveness to things that you have done to other people?
I don't think that that's the first thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's definitely an integral part of the healing process. The first thing that I think people need to know about overcoming victimhood or trauma is your voice, right?
What do you mean?
Our voice is our healing tool. It's the tool or the gift that we've been given by whatever creative entity put us here.
Mm-hmm.
This is the one thing that separates us from all other species. We are able to articulate and communicate our thoughts and our feelings. And there's a power in that. And just like the body will heal itself from anything else, if you cut your arm open, you'll get a scar or you'll get a scab. That scab will heal. Nope, you cannot come up here and assist. It will. That scab will heal and the body will heal. Our voice works in a very similar way. It's hard when you're first victimized. When I'm raped, I didn't tell anybody that I was raped by 2 men in prison until I met my wife. She was the first person I told, and I was 36 or 37 years old. Mm-hmm. And I never told anybody. And I didn't even realize at the time that I hadn't told anybody, because I mean, I've been so forthright with my life. I just suppressed it. I just kept it down. But when I told her, and again, it drives this point home, it's hard to say it at first. But if you keep saying it, if you keep telling it to people, you keep articulating your pain, it gets easier to say, right? The more you say it, the easier it is to say. That's called healing, right? And then it gets to a point where you can just talk about it. I can talk to you about it like I'm talking to you about a cup of coffee. It doesn't hurt me anymore. It doesn't affect me anymore because I've healed it. I've processed that. And our voice is the one unique tool that gives us the ability to do that. And the twofold bonus of that is that anybody that's listening might get inspired to say, I've been there too. That happened to me. And maybe I can use my voice to heal. And then we start this chain reaction of people that are vocalizing their experience. And every experience is different. It's unique because it has its own perspective because of the entity that was victimized, right? So you and I both get raped by the same guy on the same day in the same town. It'll be two totally different experiences because it's my experience and it's your experience. And if we share that, and we talk about that pain and that tragedy and that emotional process that we go through, we're healing ourselves as we're saying it, but we're also giving other people insight into how maybe they can heal. And you may not be able to take 98% of what I've done and make it applicable to your life. But if you can peel off 2%, and I can just help you in one aspect, like get over just this one hump, then you're better for that. And then maybe that spirals into something more. And then you start talking, and then somebody else listens to you. And so through you, I've now affected this person. And then that person talks. And these things are, our voice is either a tool of destruction or a tool of healing, right? And that's the power of words. And so that's where I would tell people to start. Start by talking about your trauma, talk about your pain, own your story and share it because it's unique. Everybody's story is unique and everybody is deserving to be heard and to be seen and to be noticed. And if you've endured some type of pain or trauma in your life, you need to share it because it helps other people. Epictetus famously quoted, "We are here for the sake of each other, either teach or tolerate." And I implore people to teach. I think every one of us has the ability to be a teacher because we've all gone through life and we've all have these individual experiences that we can share and other people can garner some type of inspiration or wisdom from hearing our journey.
Can you talk on the shame aspect of that then? Because there's a lot of shame in being, especially sexually abused, especially for men. If a man has been sexually abused by another man, there's a lot of shame in that, in telling that story. And I think that, to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, the reason a lot of people don't use their voice is because they feel so much shame over what happened to them. And they think they did, especially females, little girls whose dads or grandparents or uncles sexually abuse them, have this voice in their head, especially as they're becoming teenagers and they're becoming beautiful and men are starting to be more interested in them. They start to say, how did I make him want me like that? Like, how did I do that? Can you talk about the shame aspect?
Absolutely. And unfortunately on that topic, it's become almost an expected experience for women. And it's so sad, right? Like women are almost expected to be sexually harassed at some point in their life. Well, it's part of being a woman. That is the most ridiculous and unacceptable concept I've ever heard. Right? No human being should ever be sexually violated, period.
Can I share something really quickly on that? Sorry to interrupt
Absolutely.
you, but I just had this memory pop into my head where there was this guy, I was coming down to Melbourne and he was one of my Facebook friends. I said, how about we connect and, let's go out and have a coffee. And he said, how about you come and stay at my place, but I only have one bed. And I said, well, why would I stay there? And he said, well, you and I are going to have sex. I'm like, what? And he said, well, you're coming down to have sex with me, aren't you? I'm like, on what planet did you think I was coming down to have sex with you? And then I more recently had this experience. Yeah, I more recently had this experience with this guy who said, I'm really attracted to you and I'm a really good guy and we should get together and we should have a physical relationship. And I said, but I don't want one. And he said, yes, but I'm a good guy and I want to have a physical relationship with you. I'm like, why do men seem to think that women are like this tool for them to just service their needs on. So I wanted to add that to what you were saying.
Unfortunately, we are raised in a culture that supports that type of behavior.
Yeah.
Right? And as innocent as it may seem, when we're kids, you hear about the boys that chase the girls and the girls that play hard to get and run away. But when you break down playing hard to get, what does that mean? That means I want you, but I don't want you to know that I want you, and I want you to pursue me. So we're raised to not accept no as an answer. Like, we are going to chase these little girls around the playground, and if she runs from me or she hits me or she tells me no, that's her telling me that she really does like me, and that I need to pursue her and chase her and steal a kiss. And as innocent as that may seem in the realm of child talk, that is you were preconditioning these young men to grow up and not accept no as an answer, right? And I think that's a very disturbing trend that should be looked at. And then people will come out and be like, oh, you're taking it way too serious. Kids should be allowed to play. But what they don't understand is that kids are like sponges, and they absorb that instinctual treatment that they're learning. They absorb. I'm 42 years old, and I still suffer with things in my life because I started being molested at 5, right? Like, for me, for the majority of my life, sex has never been anything but despicable, stressful, and hurtful, right? There's never been any amazing parts of it. So, and that's because for the majority of my first 16 years on the planet, that's all it ever was. And so it's hard to rewire instinctual behavior, right? And I don't even know that it's possible to rewire instinctual behavior as I'm actually saying the sentence, because I've taught a class full of pedophiles. That was the way that I got out of the hole early. I was given the opportunity to teach a cognitive behavioral therapy class in prison, and they didn't tell me who the students were until I walked in and I seen it's all pedophiles. And so I have to relive my experience to all of you that have victimized children so that you get an idea of what you're doing and the cause and effect of your behavior. And it was a very profound thing for me. But that's where the shame came out the most, I think, for me, was when I was sitting in this classroom with 17 pedophiles, and I'm teaching you how to think for a change, how to be different, how to recognize that your propensity for young children causes a lifetime of hurt, pain, havoc, terror, and shame for not just the child, but their entire family. Like, you destroy entire people by your behavior. You cannot help what you're attracted to. And I understand that. If you came to me and said, Sonny, it's now illegal to be attracted to women, I'm going to go to jail. I'm not going to be able to turn around and be like, okay, I'm done. Right? Like, it just doesn't work. And so for pedophiles, they have a natural instinctual attraction to children, and you cannot change that. But you don't have to act on that instinct either. You don't have to do it, right? Because you know that it's wrong. It's wrong to steal the innocence from a child. They are not of an age of consent. They don't know what they're doing, and it's wrong. And so to teach these men that, but in that time, I'm discovering the shame aspect of it, because at one point, all of these men were little boys. You were innocent kids at some point.
You probably had it done to them.
Right. Something happened in your life where you were broken, because at one point you were nothing but pure love and joy, as all children are. That's why children's belly laughs are so addictive. And when you hear a baby laugh, you can't help. I mean, the toughest gangster in the world, Hitler, would smile if a baby laughed. Right. And that's because that's pure love. That's what pure love and pure innocence and joy looks like. And at some point that's broken. And so then shame starts to take over our life, and we don't want to admit it because it's shame. And so we relabel it or rename it into something else. I'm not ashamed. I'm depressed, or I have PTSD, or or I identify as this, or I identify as that. We do something to relabel the shame. We don't want to admit that, because then we have to admit that there is a weakness and that we are ashamed and that we feel that we had some type of hand in our own victimization. And while it's never the victim's fault. The victim doesn't often realize that. The victims often think, I did something. I shouldn't have had my hair in a ponytail running through the park with short shorts on, or I shouldn't have wore that top, or I shouldn't have been in that place with those people. Like, those actions you took never justify the violation that someone else has put on you. And it's hard to reconcile that shame, right? It's hard to figure out a way to say, well, then why did it happen? And that's where I think I learned the biggest lesson about shame, is teaching these men that as I'm listening to them recount their crimes, it's not the victim's fault. And I might not have gotten that concept until that time, that it really, really was not my fault. Because if it wasn't me, it would have been some other kid. And if it wasn't another kid, it would have been another kid. My predator was going to do it regardless. And so when we can grasp that concept that it's the predator that's coming for the victim, and the victim is not necessarily who the predator wants, but that's who the predator takes, then you can remove yourself and say, it wasn't something that I did. It was a choice that they made. And when you rationalize that, the shame starts to dissipate. And when you realize that sometimes bad things just happen. And Marcus Aurelius, I'm a huge fan of the Stoics, so I will constantly quote them. Marcus Aurelius says, everything that goes into the fire becomes fuel for the fire. And so my being molested, my being victimized, was part of the fuel to make the fire burn as bright as it does inside of me. And so when I grasp that concept, I'm also, it totally defeats my shame. It totally beats back any shame that I might feel. I had to go through this. I was supposed to go through this so that I have the ability to teach somebody else, because 1 in 6 boys are molested. It happens to so many people. And there's not a whole lot of advocates to help people get through it, to help men get through it, especially. And they don't expect somebody that looks like me to talk about it. And yet here I am. And that's because the shame is gone. And it's because I'm able to recognize that a predator chooses a victim because that's who they are, not because...
Not the other way around.
Not anything that the victim has done. The victim did not lure them in. They were going to violate somebody regardless of who it is. You just were unlucky enough to be that person. And so when you can come to that realization, the shame can pretty easily start to fall away.
So how, after you went through the forgiveness and you went through the shame, how, and I'm assuming you've done this, how did you start creating the safety? Because to go through all of that, there must be such a big part of you that didn't feel safe in this world, or in your body, or as a man.
It comes with learning about the concept of boundaries, I think. I think before I didn't have any boundaries, I wanted so hard to be liked, because most of my life I grew up being bullied and I didn't have friends. And because I was a kid that was being victimized, I had no self-esteem, and so there was no sense of pride in my appearance or my personal hygiene. And that made me a target at school for bullies. And so I was horribly bullied my entire school career. And so when you grow up feeling this constant shame and self-loathing, and you feel like you've just been a victim your whole life, you start to learn it's because I don't have boundaries. I have been, and I mean, I even suffer from this a little bit today, of being too nice and not having firm boundaries. And I've come to learn that most the time you can detract a victimizer, a potential victimizer, just by having a boundary and letting it be known, I don't accept this type of behavior, right? Like, because victimizers most of the time try to feel out their victim, right? Except for in cases of like spontaneous rape where they jump out of the bushes and rape somebody. Hold on, sorry about that. Don't kick me off the computer. All right. Except for in those rare instances where they randomly pick victims. Most of the time they try to groom a victim, especially in the cases of pedophilia. Yeah. They groom the victim, right? They try to earn the victim's trust and get them to open up a little bit. And we can teach our kids about having firm boundaries from a very young age. And most predators, pedophiles, will go away if they see that this child has boundaries and that this child is going to say something. If you touch me, I'm going to run out of this room screaming to my dad.
That's my daughter, but she'll come to me. Yeah.
Right. I'll run out of here screaming to my mom.
Yeah.
And then the kid can even laugh and it can go on to being a game and nothing ever happens. But that predator has been put on alert that that's not one to play with. I'm not going to do that. Right. And so teaching these boundaries, and even in going into my mid-20s into my later 20s, now I'm starting to realize the importance of boundaries. And boundaries build up this sense of internal security where you just feel safer because I have these boundaries established, because I know what I'm willing to accept in my life and I know what I'm not willing to accept. And there's certain things that you just cannot do to me. I just don't accept them. And I would rather have an uncomfortable encounter with you and not have you as a friend or have you in my life and lay down my boundaries than not lay down my boundaries and potentially you come in and can hurt me or cause me some type of discomfort. And so that's how I think you really focus on building a sense of self-security after overcoming trauma. It's and at the end of the day, when you reconcile what you've already been through, there's not much left to go, right? Like, what else are you going to do to me? Right?
True. I've had everything done. What else are you going to do?
Right. And you know, it's funny that my wife and I, we constantly talk about this. My threat assessment sucks. Right? Like we live in an area with a lot of homeless and drug addicts, or our business is. And so a lot of them come into the store constantly. And my wife has never been in a fight. My wife has never had anything really traumatic. She hasn't seen it. And so she's terrified. They come in and she's terrified. And she's like, "You're always just so calm." But what is there to be scared of? What are they going to do to me that hasn't been done to me in my life? You're not going to do much. And so and I've come to learn that my threat assessment level sucks.
Well, there's also a different element of ability to protect yourself. So you have a far greater ability to protect yourself than she does. So it's kind of natural that she would feel scared, unless she's a black belt, unless she's done martial art and she knows how to kick someone's ass.
Yeah, and she doesn't. So.
No, I don't either.
But she's a soft bunny, so she's not a very tough cookie.
Yeah, that's so funny. I would love to. You don't have kids yet, do you?
I have 3.
Oh, you have 3.
I have a 19-year-old, an 18-year-old, and a 5-year-old.
You're right. So then I would love to have the conversation of what discussions, especially with your 5-year-old, now that you are where you are, what discussions do you have with your 5-year-old to make them aware of what can happen?
Well, unfortunately, I haven't seen him since he was 2. Mm-hmm. I left his mother because I was in an unhappy relationship, and I tried to sit her down like an adult and told her I'm not happy and I don't want to be together anymore. Mm-hmm. She did exactly what I knew she would do and uses the child as a pawn. And
so many women do that.
And she has done her best. And so, I mean, I just spent $20,000 a few months ago in family court just to try to set up some type of custody, and didn't even get to see his face. I didn't get to hear his voice. 20 grand, just flush it down the toilet because it's a mom state. So mom, she can just put up every roadblock she wants and continue to cost me money. And it's a war of financial attrition, and whoever has the deepest pockets wins. And I don't have the ability to keep fighting in it. And for the second time, I had to give up because I ran out of funds to fight for this kid. And she poisons it. Parental alienation is a real thing.
It
And
really
so,
is.
and so she isolates him from me. She is a very hateful individual. She is very anti everything. She's also a very a popular YouTuber, and she uses the platform to just wreak havoc and spread hate, and it's sad to see. And my son is being raised in that environment, and I can't interject, I can't intercede, and it's destroying, right? It deteriorates a part of you to watch your child go through that, and to know that I can't protect him. And so it's yet another reason why I see every challenge in my life as an opportunity. You can see them as obstacles, or you can see them as opportunities. And I literally dedicate my life to doing as much as I can, live as big as I can, help as much as I can, leave such a massive legacy that when he gets older and he comes out and starts to learn about his father, who he will hate at that time because his mother is poisoning him against me.
Yeah.
He'll look back and see, like, that's my dad. That's the guy that you've been talking about this whole time. And in hopes that at some point he'll come and say, I want to know you. I need to know you. Right. It's not who I thought you were. And it's heartbreaking because the last thing that I heard about it was that he had told the lawyers that he doesn't want to see me, or he doesn't. I mean, he's 5. How
How
does he
could he
know that?
even know? Yeah.
He hasn't seen me since he was 2. How does he know he doesn't want to see me? And I have so many videos and pictures. Like, this kid and I worship this kid, and this kid worshiped me. And you can see it in these videos. You can see it in the photos. This is not an abused kid. This is a kid that loves his father. And it's sad that she's able to that we're all able to sit in real time and watch this play out, and nothing can be done about it. It's sad.
So this might be a really personal question, and feel free not to answer it if you don't want to. But I'm thinking about all the men, because I have a guy staying here who's just had something similar happen. He left his ex, and she made up a domestic violence claim against him. And now he can't see his son. She completely lied. It happened to someone else I know. The ex-wife completely lied about him physically abusing his kids. He never did. It was proven that he never did. And there are just so many stories, and there are Facebook groups set up for women who want to leave their husbands, and what lies can they say to make sure that their husbands can't have access to the kids? And I have so much compassion for men who are going through this. And again, you don't have to answer this if you don't want to. Is how are you reconciling this pain for you? Are you going back to the forgiveness? Are you, like, what are you drawing on inside of you to deal with this?
I am. I'm also able to forgive her because she's had a very hard life.
Yeah.
And I don't condone or justify her behavior in any sense of the imagination, but she is a narcissist who is unaware of what she does. She knows what she's doing. She's just unaware of what it's doing, if that makes sense.
Yes.
And
yes.
so I've come to terms with the fact that sometimes you have to think for other people. And this is one of those cases. She was a young girl at some point that has just been violated, and doesn't know how to emotionally process that pain as well, because for all intents and purposes, you could have a great life. You have a successful channel. You have you're financially stable. You're taken care of. You live in your mother's house that's owned. You don't have any bills. You have a beautiful kid. You have a great life, and you choose to focus on negativity, right? And so you're going to teach that to him, and then he's going to grow up the same way. And you're so hell-bent on trying to ridicule me and poison him against me, that you lose any concept of having a happy life. You could totally have a happy life and you just choose not to. And so when I see that kind of behavior, I'm not mad at her for it. I feel pity for her. I feel sorry for her, and I feel sorry for what's happening to my son. And so I learned a long time ago to take that pain and that hurt and turn it into fuel to motivate me, because I'm going to do great things with my life so that my son grows up and says, that's my dad. I want to know him. I want to be a part of his life. And hopefully it can begin to unravel the pain that she is causing. And so his future well-being is more important than my temporary pain.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. And so that's, I just remind myself of that. And the way that I do it is routine. I'm a very routine individual. I read Hal Elrod's Miracle Morning, and it's such an amazing concept. And so I have a routine. I'm up at 5 a.m. every day, like clockwork. And I spend 10 minutes in silent reflection. I was just on my porch sunbathing and let the sun come up, and I just bathe. If a thought comes in, I accept it, I appreciate it, and I move it on. And I'm cognizantly aware that I'm not trying to think of anything. I'm just trying to be present. Hear the birds chirp, smell the air, taste that freedom. And then I read for 10 minutes, and then I meditate for 10 minutes. And then I just sit and sip my coffee or my tea with my wife on the front porch and just enjoy life for a good 20, 30 minutes. And so that first hour of my day is all geared toward the same positive habits every morning. And so I know what to expect out of my day. And so I know that there's going to be a moment. I have pictures of my son all over here in my office. And so when I see him, I'm coming. Dad's coming. And what I'm doing is for you. And it's going to be okay. This is also his path to walk. And I'm a firm believer in fate and destiny. And this is my story. This is my experience in my life. And he has his to walk as well. And so if this is the fate that is bestowed upon him, that he has to walk through this life in a rough path in order to get to me, then that's his story. That's his path. And I'm not, there's nothing I can do. It's out of my control. And so anything that's outside of my control doesn't get my energy, because I can't control it. And when we learn to focus on the things that we can control and not give energy to the things that we can't control, that's how we start to control our life, and we can live any life that we want to.
I really want to talk about that, actually, because I was listening to something this morning and said exactly the same thing. This one was specifically around money and money mindset. And so many people complain about the tax, and they complain about their bills, and they complain about their rates, and they're constantly complaining. But these are things you cannot control. So what can you control? Well, I can control how much money I can make. I can control giving more service to make more money so I can cover these expenses.
People don't like to accept that.
It's not easy to accept, but then to move out of that mindset of I have no control, it's going back to the victim, where you cannot be a victim and accept that you actually have the power to change your life. You cannot be in both of those places at the same time. You have to let go of being a victim.
Right. You can live the same life every day, going to a job that you hate, and live in that same zone, in that same comfortable space. Or you can take control of your life, change everything, flip it on its head, take chances, take risks, and at least feel the experience of being alive. But you can't do both. You cannot do both of those things, and you have to make a decision. If you don't like your job, quit. Most people won't, not because they don't have the courage to quit or the gumption to quit, but because they fear other people's opinions. Yes. If I'm not going to quit my job because my wife won't let me. Your wife can't stop you. You know,
Yeah.
I have kids and I have a family I have to take care of. So you'll figure out another way to take care of them. Figure out a way to do it in a capacity that makes you happy. If you don't like your job, quit. If you don't like your relationship, leave it. If you don't like your house, move. If you don't like your estate, get out of it. Right. And that's the thing. People get comfortable complaining because there's varying levels of internal pain. And so people are accepting of pain that they're comfortable feeling, right? So if I hate my job, it's okay because I know what to expect. I'm going to go to work. He's going to run his mouth. He's going to do this. He's going to do that. I'm going to go through the same monotonous routines, and it sucks, but I'm used to it.
Yeah.
And so in that moment, there it is. You're used to it. You're comfortable in that pain. It's pain you can deal with. Most people don't fear living a low quality, boring, small life. They fear being powerful and rich and able to do whatever they want because it's scary. It's outside of their comfort zone.
It's also because they've been raised in pain. Like most of us have been raised through trauma. So we are used to feeling pain. It's like, I'm so comfortable in this pain.
Limiting mindsets.
Yes.
We have limiting beliefs. And so they will externally talk, man, I wish I was rich. And they'll do something like play the lottery. And I'm trying. Well, you're not trying. You're literally giving money to the gas station. You're not trying. Trying to win the lottery is not trying at all, right? And then when those people win and they hit the lottery and they get $600 million, they either end up dead, overdosed, piss poor, broke, throw it all away because you weren't ready to receive that type of life. You didn't manifest it. You weren't ready for it, and so you couldn't handle it. And that, I think that's where people, it's easier to just complain, right? It's easier to accept the circumstances that are comfortable because you're going to have food in your stomach, you got a place to sleep, your bills are paid, you don't have the life of your dreams, but at least everybody's taken care of. And that's where that line comes in, right? When you learn to dare and just do it. Do what you want to do. Take chances, because this is your only life. And if it pisses off your parents, that's their problem. If it pisses off your kids, that's their problem. If it pisses off your wife, that's her problem, right? You are not living my life. You don't have to go to sleep with me at night. Well, I mean, you know what I mean. And so it's about stepping outside of that comfort zone and being comfortable being uncomfortable.
Which is really hard. Because I've just had to go through this myself. I've been through hell and back over the last 8 years, and the last year has been focused on I can't live like this. I can't live in this victim. I can't live with this mindset. I can't live with this way. I cannot live in a life that I hate anymore because it is destroying me. And I could see that if I kept doing this, my kid was going to end up exactly the same way. And it's been hard.
It is hard. It's not easy to do, but when you're doing it, and there's small things that you need to do that really help propel you forward, like having rituals, having routines every day, celebrating small victories. And that's another reason to have routines. Make your bed perfectly every morning. And while it's a pain in the ass for the first week to meticulously get up and make your bed perfectly every day, after a week or so, it becomes second nature, and you celebrate that victory every day. You start your day off winning, and it puts you in a winning mindset. And it's something so small and seemingly insignificant propels you forward. And then you learn to be comfortable being uncomfortable and stepping out and taking those things. I was homeless 2.5 years ago. And this is 5 years after enduring hell for 18 years, after growing up for 16 years in hell. So my whole life was shit up until I got out of prison. And then for 5 years, life was was relatively good with a couple of bumps and ups and downs, and I have to learn how to deal with life. But I started a band shortly after getting out of prison, and I mean, I did phenomenally because I believe in the power of manifestation. If you want to do something, do it. And so I started to chase it. And 90 days after we started that band, we were signed to Ferocious Records, and I'm touring the East Coast of the United States doing shows in venues. And I'm like, I just went from sitting in a can to screaming fans in front of me on stages. Like, wow.
You couldn't be more opposition if you tried.
Right. That just happened. And so as I'm doing that, and even so, starting out, and this is a fantastic point that I went on a ride along with the Indio Police Department yesterday morning. And I was talking to this officer about this very thing. Maybe 6 months ago, I saw a guy that shared a post on Facebook, or he posted about me on Facebook, and it was from 3 or 4 years ago. And he said, "Remember the time when Sonny Von Cleveland put on a suit to give a speech to one guy?" And somebody had shared the post with me because I got the guy blocked. I mean, I couldn't even see it. But when I saw that, and I saw the 5 or 6 guys that laughed about it, it surprised me, because that's the small mentality of people that think. And here's the power of that one guy, because this happened. This was a thing. I put on a suit to go out and give out a speech. Nobody showed up except one guy, and I gave a speech to one guy. And that guy now is a business owner in Cleveland, Ohio. And he has a couple of businesses. He's thriving in life, and his life was shit prior to this. He was addicted to drugs, hooked on alcohol, had nothing in life. But that guy is now a business owner, and he helps all kinds of people. He's thriving, doing fantastic in life. And by the way, I've spoken to thousands of people now. I've spoken to schools in Kenya and Africa. I've gone into schools in Los Angeles, California, and I've spoke to hundreds and hundreds of people. And I've helped people all over the world. And I look back, and it's that kind of energy that propels me and fuels me forward. It's that kind of small thinking from that guy who thought that me putting on a suit and talking to one person and giving a speech to one guy was somehow disgraceful, or somehow made me like a joke or a clown or something like that. But that one act put all of this into motion. And that's the point. Jump scared. Don't be afraid of other people's opinions. Don't care what anybody's going to say, because that speech that one guy has turned into a life with a nonprofit, 5 businesses in Palm Springs, California, and helping heal the world. I'll take it. And so you just have to take a step, no matter what, no matter who's watching, no matter who's speaking, no matter, it's your life. Do what you want to do. Be kind. Let kindness be your compass, and the world is yours. It's that simple. And we can go through hours and hours of soliloquies and formulas and transformational curriculums and all this to discover this one small fact, that be kind and do whatever you want to do. And that's the key to life.
Yes. I'm sorry for the silence. I was just taking all of that in, just taking in all of that validation. Like everything that you just said validates everything that I believe about the world. And sometimes it's nice to receive that validation and go, yes, be kind and do what you want to do. And as long as you are doing it through kindness, then you're not being selfish, because you are doing what you want to do without hurting other people.
And self-care is not selfish.
Yeah.
You cannot serve from an empty cup. And I think this is one of the biggest misinterpretations of something that we've ever had in our lifetime, where it's, you're the man, you have to work, take care of your family, and it's all about them. You live for them. That is why you are here. And that's the biggest crock of shit that anybody's ever put on a man.
And a woman. Can I just say that as a mom, we have exactly the same thing.
I was coming to that.
Yeah.
That's the biggest crock of shit to ever put on a man. And it's the biggest pile of crap to ever put on a female, that her job is to be a mom and rear children.
Yeah.
These are two of the most limiting beliefs that we've been taught, but it's been taught ubiquitously throughout the world for the last 100 years that that is our job, that is our purpose, that's why we are put here. And we have to rewire that thinking. My job is to be happy. My job is to be fulfilled and have a purpose-driven life. When I do that by focusing on my own happiness, by doing what I want to in my life, and letting kindness be my guide, my compass, and doing whatever it is that I want that makes me happy and following my dreams. When I follow those sets of principles, I am then in a position to be the best father, to be the best husband, to be the best friend to other people. And so in order for me to fulfill that societal obligation that we have been ingrained to learn, I have to be the best me that I can be. And you can call it selfish, but it's called self-care. And I can pour for everybody from a full cup, but I cannot serve anyone from an empty cup.
I love that so much. It kind of shifts my perspective, because I don't do self-care very well. I am terrible at it. I was raised by a single mom who also didn't do self-care. I was also raised with this perspective of you give everything of yourself for your kid. And of course, being a single mom, you're giving everything to your kid, and then there's nothing left. And the guilt that you get if I sit down for 5 minutes to have quiet time, the guilt of not being there for her, or not cleaning the house, or not cooking food, or not looking after the dogs or the cats, it just all comes flooding in. And then it's like, oh, screw it, I may as well just get up. I'm not going to sit here and feel all this guilt. I'll just get up and go and clean something. Because it's like you said, it's so much easier. It's so much easier to do the thing that you feel like you have to do, even though it's from a negative space, than to sit and feel the feelings and go, it's okay, you can feel guilty, but I'm still not getting up because I need to take care of myself.
Next. And you have to be comfortable having uncomfortable conversations. So if I don't get up and go do your laundry, what? Well, you're a bad dad. Am I? Let's have that conversation. What makes me a bad father? The fact that I won't get up and wash your laundry? Because, 20 years ago, kids washed their own damn laundry in creeks and stuff, right? Like mom and dad didn't wait on you hand and foot, right? Like, I don't know where we went or when we went to there as a society, but I think coming from the rearing that I had also gave me the perspective that you don't have to be such an invasive hands-on parent. You cultivate a child's individuality. We have such a misconception that we have to raise our children better than we were raised. And I don't know that's not our responsibility. Is not to raise them better than we were raised. Our responsibility at the end of the day as a parent is to cultivate your child's individuality and happiness and protect them. That's what your job is. Your job is to protect them and cultivate their individuality. Let them grow, help them to blossom and see the world, and let them be themselves, right? And that's where that's supposed to be, right? And of course, you have to teach kids discipline. Well, I grew up with my mom beating me with whatever she could get her hands on. I don't know that that's discipline, right? I don't. And again, I don't like, my son just went to the Marines. He's in boot camp right now. My 18-year-old is in the Marines right now. And we have a good relationship at this point, but there's still cracks there, right? There's still holes there because I haven't been a disciplinarian in his life. I was in prison before he was born, and I was there for the first 12, 13 years of his life. And so I lost the disciplinarian figure in his life, and I'm not that guy anyway. Like, I'm not going to beat my kid. Period. That's just, I don't, what good does that do? That doesn't do anything.
And who decided that was discipline? I mean, I discipline my daughter, but I discipline her with communication and boundaries.
The good old Bible said, if you spare the rod, you spoil the child. And so they took all that stuff literally, and, and we can beat kids for it. And it's all it does is teach kids violence, and it teaches them how to either absorb pain or cheat the system. And so, because kids are going to do what they want to do anyway. And even if the threat of violence is there, I'm just going to figure out a way to do it without getting caught. And then that turns them into it gives them this manipulative mindset where if it's not fixed, they grow up to be manipulative adults. And then they cause all kinds of havoc. And so there's a whole lot. There's a whole lot to it, right?
I feel like there's another hour of conversation we could have just on that.
Yeah, and I mean there's so much further that you can go into, and just because I've gone through all these changes and learned all this stuff, it doesn't mean that I'm infallible, right? None of us are infallible or immune to making mistakes, right? Like I still make mistakes all the damn time. It's just about owning them, and it's about being authentic and realizing that mistakes are made and people make more humans, right? That's the fallibility of humanity is and always has been since the dawning of time. People have screwed up since the beginning, right? That's how we got here, is by failure. We failed our way forward, right? And we can look at some of the most amazing people in history, and they all failed to get to where they are. You know, we look at Albert Einstein, who failed 1,000 experiments until he hit the light bulb. You look at people like Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela had to do 27 years in prison before he could get out and become president and invoke all the changes that he had to change. You know, Gandhi cheated on his wife, right? And we look at Gandhi like he was a freaking saint. Gandhi was a very nonviolent, very Buddhistic dude, but he still made mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. It's just a part of the human creation, right? And it's when you can come to terms with that and realize that I made a mistake, I'm remorseful for it, I own it, I don't make excuses for it, I'm not lying about it, I'm not going to hide it. This is what I did. If you can accept that, awesome. If you can't, there are 7 billion other people on the planet. Your perception of me is not going to dictate my life. And at the end of the day, and I had to struggle with that a lot, because one of the things that really broke me down when I was incarcerated in the hole was the likability factor. It's a book called The Likability Factor. And I started to read it. And as I go through it, this book just put me in such a state of self-hatred, because I go through all this stuff and I determine I'm not somebody that's worthy of being liked. I haven't done anything in life to earn somebody's friendship or kindness. And it threw me for a loop. I'm like, this book sucks, man. I hate this book. And then my guy Mallory was like, well, why do you hate it so much? And I'm like, because it just shows me what a piece of shit I am. I'm not worthy of having friends or being liked. And so as you start to peel back all the layers of pain and trauma and self-loathing and unworthiness, you then start to realize that I can be anybody that I want to be. And you hear people all the time, be real, be real. That's not who you really are. You don't know who I really am. I don't know who I really am. Right? So how are you going to tell me that I can't be anybody I want to be? If I am somebody that lies, steals, manipulates, and cheats, that's what I'm wanting to do. Right? I'm doing that because I want to. Whether there's layers of pain or trauma or whatever, or masks that are propelling me to perpetuate that behavior, I'm still making the choice to do it, and I'm doing that because I want to. Right? If I turn around and I'm a good, stand-up, honest, authentic, pure-hearted person, I want that too. And so that's what I choose to do. I choose to want to be that person. And not everybody's going to like that, because it's a big fat mirror that's being held up to their face, because I don't have any special powers that nobody else has. I don't have any type of special qualities or something innately that's magical that allows me to be this person while, you know, the rest of the world is the way that the rest of the world is. Everybody can do this. We all have the same ability, the same power. It's just a matter of choice. I stopped caring if people liked me. Once I learned how to be likable, and I learned, well, that's all manipulation. right? To qualities, to have and possess and exude qualities that make people like you is a form of manipulation, right? I'm doing X, Y, and Z so that A, B, and C will like me.
Yep.
And then when you get lost, it's another mask that we're putting on. And it gets to the point where everybody likes me now. And if you don't like me, that's your fault, blah, blah, blah. And then you get to the point where it's, I don't know how to not be liked. And that's one of the craziest things about my book that's coming out, because my wife is ghost writing for me. Her and I have, this has been a collaborative process between her and I. And as we were final proofreading once again, we came to this point at the end of the book where I determined that it's okay to not be liked. And it just came full circle for me, because growing up my whole life, I was self-esteem was just down. I never had friends. I was not likable. Then I spent all that time learning how to be liked, and then spent all the time putting that into motion to become liked by everybody, to coming to the realization that I don't have to be liked by everybody. And so it kind of came full circle. And now I'm just at the point in my life where if you don't like me, that's okay. I'm okay with that. You know what I mean? It's fine, because I'm a good human being. I'm a good guy. I do a lot of good for the world. I put out good to the world, and I try to live that life. And not everybody's going to like me. And it's also because it holds up a big ass mirror. What's your excuse for not living a good life? Right? And people, instead of saying, God, that guy makes me feel bad about myself because I'm realizing the areas that I'm lacking in life and where I could improve in my life, they'll come off with, that guy thinks he's better than everybody else. He thinks he's, and that in and of itself is a form of self-protection, covering up that unworthiness and that shame, right? Because anybody can do this. It's not a secret. It's not like exclusive to me. You don't have to go through a lifetime of pain and trauma to be able to do it. You can do it anytime.
Yes. I could really keep talking to you, but I am aware that we have.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I scheduled you until 5:30, so I mean, I still got.
What time is it there for you?
Oh, it's 5:09, so that means it's pretty late for you.
No, it's morning. It's 10:10 in the morning for me.
Yeah, that's right. I'm the other way around. Because in the morning, because Gary Fahey comes and joins me on my show every week. Sometimes we might miss a week, but I go at 6 or 7 in the morning, and that's 11 or 12 at night for him. So.
Oh, yeah, right. So he does it the other way around.
Yeah, we are on the other sides of the globe.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, I still have a half an hour. If there's anything else you want to touch on.
I think the last question I want to ask you is, after sharing all of this and after every single interview you've ever done, what do you think is the most valuable piece? Would you say forgiveness is the most valuable piece for you, for your journey?
Yes and no. I think the most valuable thing that that I've garnered from my entire journey in life is suffering ceases to be suffering the moment it has a meaning.
Mm-hmm.
It's just one of the most powerful statements ever, because even if I don't forgive, I still harbor resentment. I do have some. I don't talk to my brother. My brother decided to have an affair with my oldest son's mother when I was in prison and take my oldest son from me and raise him as his own. My son still calls him dad to this day. And that level of betrayal broke something in me. And while I don't dwell on it and I don't think about it, we don't talk. I don't ever talk to my brother. I don't know what's going on in his life. I don't, and then my relationship with my son is also strained. We don't talk often. He's 19, and we talk occasionally, but there's a lot of strain there. And so I don't think that I've actually forgiven in that aspect. but I also don't let it bother me, right? I'm okay with where it's at. And I can say that I've probably forgiven and think it, but if I had, I would probably try to reconcile a relationship, right?
No, not
And
necessarily. I don't think so. I think that you can forgive and not condone the behavior.
sure, and then that's 100% where I'm at. And
Yeah.
so I guess I just don't know if I have forgiven or not. And it's just not at the forefront of my mind because it's not taking up any space in my life.
Mm.
If I have forgiven him, awesome. If I haven't, well, that's awesome too. Because it doesn't, there's no space for it in my life. But I think forgiveness is paramount. Yeah. I just for me, I don't know that there's any one specific thing. I think
Mm.
it's a accumulation of several principles that you got to find a balance, right? But forgiveness is definitely up there. You got to be forgiving. You have to forgive yourself and others. That is, it's absolutely paramount. But you also have to have a goal. You have to have a dream. You have to have desires. You have to have want. You have to be self-aware. You have to, all these things tied in with forgiveness is what the secret formula there is.
And then I guess for me, the way I found my way through was the compassion for understanding that all of these people that had done something to hurt me was because they had had something done to them that hurt them.
They
And
just didn't
that was
do
such
it.
an opening for me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a sad reality, but yeah. And it's not an excuse for them to
No.
perpetuate the behavior, but it puts you in a mindset where you can at least understand.
Yeah.
And even if they didn't ask for forgiveness, I can still forgive them. Like my Uncle Mike. My Uncle Mike died a couple years ago now, and there was never any reconciliation there. And I'd forgiven him a long time ago, right? And so it's forgiveness is your own weight to carry. When you give it, the weight goes away. When you hold it, the weight stays there. And so if you're harboring that resentment, recognize that that is a choice. You're choosing to do that. And you can't complain about a life that you're choosing to live. And then at the end of the day, every single thing that we do is a choice. And so whatever you're going through right now, you're choosing to. It's that simple. And that's not a popular opinion. I will catch a lot of flack for that. I'm not choosing to have PTSD. I
How
mean,
do you, I will
we
ask
can
you,
argue semantics until we're blue in the face, but
how do you reconcile that for kids though? Because I do believe that we're choosing this life and we are creators, except at which point does that start? Because I don't think anyone could sit here and say a child chooses to go through what you went through.
facts. And there is a time when maturity sets in. And I don't expect a 10-year-old to understand the complexities of self-awareness and they're not choosing their path.
Yeah.
It's when you are, I think, old enough to have a real life conversation with yourself, when you're able to actually sit down and cogitate on the elements of self-awareness and forgiveness and manifestation and emotional intelligence, then you're ready, right?
Yeah.
Once you are able to garner knowledge, that's when you're ready. That's when life starts to become a choice. And so you can even make the argument for people that are in their 20s, in their 30s, in their 40s that are still battling trauma and they're depressed and they don't know how to get out of it. Yes, you're not making the choice to be depressed, but there is a choice that you can make to get out of it. And once you are presented with that choice, if you choose not to take it, then you are now choosing the life you have. And so by that, people are choosing their life. And some people just don't realize that they're choosing their life. And that's where mindset coaching and personal development training comes into play, which is the whole cause behind my nonprofit, the Von Cleveland Foundation. I want to disseminate these books of wisdom and intelligence and knowledge that give people the tools to overcome themselves. And because it's expensive, right? As a mindset coach, I know how expensive it is, but I'm a byproduct of mindset coaching. The reason I am the way that I am is because I've done the work and gone through the processes and learned the knowledge of mindset. And I want to make that available to everybody, to the people that need it the most, the marginalized people of the world, the incarcerated, the previously incarcerated, drug addicts, alcoholics, homeless people. These are the people that need it. You cannot afford it by any stretch of the imagination, but you need it. You need it the most. So let's figure out a way to disseminate this information to the people that need it the most, because they live in our communities, they live in our cities, they live in our towns, and we need to help them instead of relocating. Homelessness is a big problem here, and they just grab them up and relocate them to another side of the city. And that they're going to continue to do what they do, and then they'll migrate back to other places instead of just reload. How about we empower them? Right? Let's empower them. They can't afford this stuff. So I will raise money and organize teams to acquire these materials and disseminate it to them. And if it only helps 1%, that's 1% that wasn't helped prior. You know what I mean?
And on that note, do you want to share what your website is so people who do want to come and support you can go?
So there's a couple. I'm still learning websites and all that fun stuff. So there's still things that are missing, but you can go to heywhiteboy.com. And that's the primary website for the book. You can also go to itopiacoaching.com, and that is my coaching company where I have the Choice Effect, which is my personal development curriculum, and other coaching resources are available there as well. But you can also just Google Sonny Von Cleveland, and you can find a link to just about anything that I'm on. I'm on all social media platforms. And I have a pretty unique name. There's not many Sonny Von Clevelands, actually. There's a lot that'll come up, but that's because I didn't know how social media worked when I got out. And I would create a Facebook or create an Instagram, be like, well, that sucks. I messed that all up. And then would just start another one, and then would start another one and and not realizing that you can't get rid of them. They don't delete. So when you look me up, there's like 10 of me. And it's like, yeah, I don't even know. I don't even know the emails anymore or how to get in there to take them down. So there, it's a mess. But yeah, just Google Sonny Von Cleveland, you'll find me.
You'll find you. Thank you so much. This has been such a good conversation.
Amazing conversation. Thank you so much.
So that just happened. that was such a good conversation. There's so much more in that for me, because I haven't really gone into the depths of somebody who has gone through such serious sexual abuse and being able to ask such a deep conversations. And I know that probably doesn't make sense to you, but it makes sense to me in my head. But Sonny he's really amplified for me the importance of forgiveness, because I actually thought I had done deep forgiveness, but listening to him and listening to how the process that he went through, writing it all down, reading it, seeing that wasn't forgiveness, that was blame, and there were stories, and hearing how he did that, I kind of realized that there's this part of me now that I'm feeling that's saying, I don't think I've actually forgiven people in my life. Listening to him, I don't think I've forgiven people. I think there's a part of me that is still holding on to that victim, that's still holding on to that blame, that's still holding on to the shame a little bit. And yeah, now I'm uncomfortable. Now I'm really uncomfortable looking at it going, if I want to move to the next phase of my journey, am I actually willing to forgive? Am I actually willing to let go of all of these different experiences that I've had that have hurt me? Am I really actually willing to forgive people for what happened to me? So that's a whole new thing that I didn't know I had before I had the conversation with Sonny. So thanks, Sonny. Good job. Oh, too funny. I will put all of his links in the description below. Please go and see him and support his nonprofit. What a gift. He is in service. He is supporting people who really need support. He's supporting the homeless. He's supporting the drug addicts. He understands that they are the way they are because of the damage that they have been through. They don't have to be there. They don't have to stay there. They're there because they are just a consequence of their circumstance. And he is doing beautiful work to support them. So please go and check him out. You can also check me out at lovecreatesfreedom.com and come on my coaching journey. I'm so excited now that I'm coaching people and I'm really helping people identify their thoughts and their feelings and themselves in the center and creating that observer. The best place to start all of this work is to start with awareness. For me, it was the awareness. It's had to have been aware of what the thoughts are saying, aware of what the feelings, aware of how much my life is defined by those thoughts and those feelings. And so that's now what I'm doing. This is me giving my service, is to help people come into that awareness. What else? Oh, please make sure you like and subscribe to this channel because we are having more and more conversations. I have incredible people lined up. So do make sure you like and subscribe and share. Please do share this with anyone, especially men, especially any man that you know that has been through a similar journey, or just any man. I think every man can gain wisdom from Sonny and the gift that he has given us. So thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching if you're on the YouTube channel. And remember, you are truly and greatly appreciated. Mwah.